everyone. Today on Word Made Digital, we're talking to Matti Haapoja. If you don't know who Matti is, he has 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. And this kind of success on YouTube happened to him actually quite quickly in a really short period of time. We're going to be diving into the world of YouTube today. We're looking at how he moved from filming for church to working with brands like San Pellegrino and Nike, and how he left all that to do YouTube. And so we're looking at building someone else's brand versus building your own dream. He's going to talk about that, talking about providing value and entertainment on YouTube. Also looking at how do you get people to click on your video in the world of YouTube? Is it oversaturated? How do you get attention? How do you get people to notice you? We're also going to have a real conversation about what can happen with YouTube stars, talking about burnout, public failures, and also, honestly, just the nasty comments of trolls and how to not let that kind of get in your head and affect you if you're trying to do YouTube. This is all going to be related to not just YouTube as vloggers, but also YouTube for church. We want to explore what churches and Christian organizations can do in this time to use and leverage the digital world of YouTube to reach people. And so thanks so much for listening to these episodes. I'm so glad you're along for this journey. Have you shared this with anybody? There's somebody in your life, I think, who will want to hear this. Maybe you want to encourage them. Maybe they're going along their own YouTube journey and you want to pass this along to them. Maybe they even know Matti themselves. We're going to dive into this conversation, but thanks so much for those of you who have shared it, who are reviewing Word Made Digital. It means so much to me that we're building a community here of people who value these kinds of conversations. And so without much further ado, let's dive into the conversation with Matti Haapoja.
You're listening to the Word Made Digital podcast with Joanna LaFleur, where we discuss all things creative and communications for the church. The church carries the best news in the world, so we want to help you be the best creatives and communicators in the world. Let's go.
So, hey, Matti, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you could join me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So as we dive in, I just would love you to tell us, who are you? Give us a bit of a bio of who you are.
My name is Matti Haapoja. I am a filmmaker and more recently, I guess, a YouTuber, which sounds still really weird to say, but that's what I do nowadays. I don't really actually shoot anything else other than my own YouTube videos, so that's what I do.
And so I'd love to go back a little bit with you, and because it's the reason actually I know you is more from the pre-YouTube days of Matti.
Yep.
But go even further back than that. Tell us, how did you get into filmmaking in the first place? Where did that come from for you?
Yeah. So like going way back, like I went to York University for kinesiology, and then I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it. I did 2 years of that. And I was like, maybe there's something better for me. So I decided to go to Finland. I'm from Finland. So I went back there. I went to Bible college. And then I kind of felt like, I'm going to be a youth pastor. And so that was the trajectory that I was going towards. But then I don't know why. I don't even know why. I still don't. I've tried to remember why I thought it was a good idea to pick up a camera and start filming videos for the church. But I was just like, this would be fun kind of thing. I think that's what it was. Like, there was like kind of a need. There was like a conference or something like that, and we're like, it'd be fun to make a video for it. So we picked up like a daddy handy cam. Like
I was gonna say, like, what kind of camera did you have?
It was straight up like one of those daddy handy cam. Like it filmed in HD, so we're like, this is sweet. But it was like literally like a handy cam like this. Yeah. Super ghetto. First videos were horrible. It was awesome, but people loved them right away. It was great. And then so I was in Bible college for 3 years, and I'd be in class 1 year listening to the teacher, and then 1 year with my headphones listening to some tutorial or something like that on this filmmaking stuff.
So you're in class for whatever you were studying, but you were at the same time actually learning what turned into your career.
Yeah, without like it was funny because like I wasn't learning to be like, I'm going to be a filmmaker. It was just like, this is interesting to me, right. And it was more interesting than what the teacher was talking about. So I was like more interested in the tutorial that I was learning about filmmaking. So that continued. I became a youth pastor for a year. Then stuff happened, and I had to I moved back to Canada because I met my now wife, and
stuff happened.
Finland.
As in the love of your life.
Yeah, plus I would have had to go to the army in Finland if I would have stayed. So
Yeah.
I was like, forget that. I'm gonna go back to Canada. And then yeah, then that's when I met you. Actually, my brother was the one who reached out to you, I think, and was like, "Hey, are you guys like hiring any media guys at the church?" And then yeah, we took or you guys, the C4 Church hired us. We were part-time, both of us sharing like a full-time salary kind of thing, doing the media, and then that's kind of where it like really started for me, I guess.
Yeah, and I remember in those days, I'd be curious to see what you would say now, because you know when we work together more closely, I see you now more socially than I would in any work capacity. But in the old days, I don't know if you would have described yourself as an artistic or creative person. Necessarily, you would have maybe said it was more technical. I'm curious, like a technical skill.
Yeah,
What would you say about that now?
I still would say I'm not like I would never call myself like an artist, for example, or
Okay.
I wouldn't
Okay.
just like when you ask me who I am, I would never consider like I would never describe myself as a creative or a creative person or something like that. My brain is so logical, and in school I was always, you know, math, science. I loved those where they were objective, and the teacher could never say that I was wrong. Like if I was right, I was right, kind of thing. That was what, like, you know, I liked. I hated English class and all those art classes. All were the worst for me. So yeah, it's a kind of an interesting thing. Like I consider myself like a logical creative, I guess, in a way. Like I
Huh.
don't care so much about the art. Like it just like a nice looking thing it doesn't really mean anything to me. But it has to have story in it. Like if it's getting a point across, if it has a story to it, then that's what excites me.
Yeah. And so after you moved on from working at the church in a full-time way because there were, I mean, ultimately tons of other opportunities that you had. So you got it before you went to YouTube. Like, what were you doing?
Yeah. So what happened was I was working at the church for, I think it was a bit or whatever, and I felt like I'm the kind of person that always want to go like forwards. I always want to get better at what I'm doing and like kind
Yeah.
of take it to the next level. And I felt like at the church I was kind of like sort of the best videographer there, and I wasn't really learning from people that are way better than me. So I felt like my skills were plateauing, and so I thought the best way to learn more would be to work with people that are way better than me, which would be freelancing and working in like the commercial industry. So I ended up going full-time freelance, and then I met some other people, and I was doing some commercial jobs, DPing, so that's like director of photography, which is basically the cameraman or the person in charge of the camera department. That was my role. Was starting to work for some companies like San Pellegrino and Nike and some bigger companies, but they were still like smaller commercials, nothing like a big TV commercial, really.
Yeah.
But that was really fun. But it was it wasn't really. Again, it wasn't really.
Yeah, for a lot of people, that's the dream.
Yeah.
You got the dream.
Yeah, yeah. I had work all the time. I was getting paid really well, but there was something about it that didn't feel right. And I think what it was is I felt like I was always building somebody else's brand or somebody else's dream in a sense, and I felt like my thing was kind of just being put to the side, and I wanted to shoot documentaries and tell stories and that kind of stuff, and I felt like the commercials weren't actually getting me closer to that point. The further I went up in the chain, like bigger and bigger, the less say I had in those projects. So I just had that small role kind of thing, which is cool too. But I don't know. I wanted to build something that was my own and that would be longer lasting, I guess.
And so, why YouTube? How did you find your way then onto YouTube as a platform?
Yeah, so for me it was I had experimented with some passive income streams. So I was selling some stock footage, like stock video clips online. And that was making me some money, and then I made a course on wedding videography. I started in weddings, and I did a course on that, and that was making me some money every month. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Like, one of the big things that I don't like about freelancing is that it's not very stable. Like 1 month, I never really knew where my money would be coming like 2 months from now or a month from now. So I wanted to make it more stable. So I was like passive income. And then I realized that it was working. And then I started thinking, okay, I just need a bigger audience in order for this to really work. And I think I was kind of, I guess in a sense, naive about which platforms were the best. But for some reason, YouTube just seemed the best for me. It was like, okay, Vimeo was kind of dead. YouTube seems to be rising up. I was starting to get myself personally more interested in YouTube, and I felt like the quality of YouTube videos was starting to go up. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try YouTube. And I set some goals for myself. I had like, I wanted to, I wanted $1,000 from AdSense, so like from YouTube itself to make $1,000. I wanted to have 1 million views and 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, which was like a crazy goal. Like that almost never happens to get 100,000 in the first year. And then I just started doing YouTube. I was like, okay, I made this video. I'm gonna start posting on YouTube, and I decided I'm gonna try to post 2 or 3 videos a week, and then
which is a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Like going from working on a project with a long timeline, for an ad campaign, you're working well in advance, and now you're just shooting, edit.
Yeah, and that was one of the big things that I'd learned in the beginning was I had kind of downplayed like people who are like vloggers and daily vloggers, that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, that's not real filmmaking. Anybody can do that. That's so easy. But I actually learned it specifically on one trip. I went to BC to snowboard, and I was like, I'm gonna vlog this every single day. And after the first day, I was like, nope, can't do this. It's just too crazy. Like to film and then edit the same day. You're so tired. And then to do it all over again every day. So I had to kind of figure out, and in the beginning, my channel was called Travel Feels, and it was about travel. I thought it was going to be like, the majority was going to be about travel, but then some to filmmaking tutorials and inspirational stuff. But I realized that the tutorials were actually they're easier to do because I can do them anywhere in the world. I don't have to be traveling in order to do a tutorial like I do have to do for travel videos or travel type content. And then they're actually, I think they're a lot more, there's more demand for that because I'm offering some sort of knowledge, something for the audience instead of just entertaining. So I think that those are the 2 key things with YouTube, kind of going all over the place here. But 2 key things is if you're doing YouTube, you have to provide value and entertain. I think that's how you have to do it.
Right.
Or you can focus on one or the other, but you have to like really be good at that one thing. Like,
yeah, because I mean, you're learning on YouTube, like people want to know you, like they want to know your story. It's the personality that keeps people coming back. That like the person who they look at or they watch every day or every week. Versus like when you talk about tutorials, what you mean is like, I don't know, here's the 5 best ways to light your vlog, or
exactly
a few ways to get a great. I don't know. I mean, I'm blanking. I've watched so many of your videos,
it's okay.
And it sounds like I haven't now that I can't think of titles of any of them.
Yeah, like 5 tips for filming B-roll.
There we go. You hopefully you know your own content better than I apparently do. I have watched a lot of your videos. I don't know why I blanked, but
I was like the same way if I'm trying to figure out my own titles. So I wouldn't remember either.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now we're talking about titles. What have you learned about titling videos? Does that make a difference in views for you, or is it that little thumbnail picture? Like what do you think is the thing that gets people to click on it?
So for YouTube, I think like. So title and thumbnail are the most important things. I think well, not the most, but in that initial, the reason why I would back this up is YouTube is by far the strongest platform in the sense that a nobody like me with no social media following, not a public figure or anything, can start a channel, and within a year I had 250,000 subscribers. And that's largely
So I want to say that again. Within a year, 250,000 subscribers. Now, I don't know, where are you at today, like the time we're recording?
Almost 400,000.
400,000, yeah.
Yeah, so like a year and a half, 400,000.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and that's because of the fact, or the way that YouTube works, where they have the suggested videos. So you'll watch, whoever your favorite YouTuber is, let's say Casey Neistat, and then it might suggest my video after that video, or on the side, Or when you just log into YouTube, the algorithm will just, decide that, oh, this guy likes filmmaking, he might like one of Matti's videos, and then they push one of my videos to them. So that's where the title and thumbnail are so crucial, especially, but always, but especially when you're starting out, because that's your hook, right? Like if your title and thumbnail aren't good, I'm not going to click it when I see it suggested to me. But if it's like, oh, that's an interesting thumbnail and that title interests me, then I'm going to click it when it's suggested to me. But also with a title, you want to hit certain keywords. So like my very first video that took off was a video called Making GoPro Cinematic. And so I hit GoPro, they're really popular, and then I hit Cinematic, which I didn't know that I was doing this. This was like complete fluke, really. I was just like, oh, this is a good title, but I didn't know why. And because of those two things, I think it just started getting, like, people would either search how to make GoPro look better or how to make it look cinematic, or stuff about GoPro or stuff about cinematic, and they would get pushed my videos afterwards. And so that's how all of a sudden I started getting, 200, 300 subscribers a day, because that one video was being pushed to everybody. Because it was a good thumbnail, a nice aerial, epic shot, and then title was good, and then
And people are using YouTube to search. I think it's the second largest search engine in the world. So if people are looking for how to cook a chicken or how to make a video or whatever it is that their topic of interest is, like, YouTube is where people are going to learn how to do things. And so it's people were beginning to find you even sort of when you switched more from that travel focus. Although those videos are epic, I think people should still go watch them. These are gorgeous videos. But then when you moved to tutorials, people were looking for you were giving answers to things that people were looking for. Yeah,
that was the big thing I noticed, that like a travel video takes way longer to make, like an epic travel video. I have to travel somewhere, I have to film for many days, and I have to edit for many days. Whereas a tutorial I can do in 4 hours sometimes. I can finish and film and edit and finish the whole video in about 4 hours. So that was like a big difference. But then also a travel video is really hard to title. Like, it's hard to title in a way that people would want to watch that. Whereas a tutorial, it comes naturally to title it something that you would search yourself or that you would be interested in.
Right.
If that makes sense.
And so, I mean, your channel has obviously grown like crazy. It's unusual. Like, the story of your YouTube channel is unusual. Yeah. I mean, even if someone has a nice title and a nice thumbnail, it doesn't mean people are finding it or watching it or it's being suggested to them. So what do you think has been part of the success of that for you? I'm sure people ask you this all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe because they're self-interested, they want to do it themselves, but also just in general, what's the story of why this has worked for you?
Well, I think I had like a kind of like a competitive advantage going into it, because I had 7, 6, 8 years of, I don't remember exactly how many years of filmmaking experience. So I didn't have to struggle with the filmmaking aspect of making YouTube videos. That comes so naturally to me, and I could make it look really nice, whether it's just me sitting in my office studio or I'm out filming nice B-roll. I can always make it look really good. So I had an advantage there. But I think what it comes down, so like I said, one of the most important things is your title and thumbnail. But then once you get, if those are good, and then the person clicks on that video, if the content isn't good, then people aren't going to care. They're going to close out of that pretty quickly, and they're definitely not going to subscribe to your channel. Right. But if it's good, they might watch the whole video. They might not subscribe right away, but then they see another one of your videos, they're like, oh, this one's good too, and then they might subscribe. Or after 3 or 4 of those, then they might subscribe to your channel. So really what it comes down to is having good content. And when I say that, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be really cinematic and beautiful looking and all that. I think it really just has to have a point. Like, you have to be telling a story. And to me, my logical brain is like, what is a story? Like, I don't, like, would I have to like have like a bad guy and a good guy and like some sort of conflict and like, no, it just literally has to have a point. So after watching that video, I can say, oh, it was about that thing. It was about filmmaking. It was about using that camera. It was about why YouTube is hard. It was about something. The person can say it right away. But if there's none of that, then it's kind of pointless, and you're just wasting time.
Yeah. Like, for example, right now, an ongoing story that's coming out in your YouTube videos is that you've recently moved to a new studio or an office space with a friend of yours. And so that's coming out in your videos. Like, you're using this new, like, it's not that you don't have to move offices to make a story, but you're using that as sort of background for all your stories. Like what was one you posted this week about the furniture thing? Maybe you want to use that as an example.
Yeah, so like I just I use like vlogging as a vessel essentially to tell a point or to tell a story. So that one was to announce my new hire. I was hiring a guy, but then I was kind of giving some backstory as to why I'm hiring a person. And so what better way to show like that I have a million things to do, that's just like so many things to do, including bringing this box from Structube, a furniture store, to my office, carrying up the stairs and all that, just to like illustrate the point of, and that's really what storytelling is, telling not only in words but also in visuals what I'm talking about. And that you talking about the office, that's like the way I would describe it, it's like if you watch a TV show like Friends or Seinfeld or House, you can watch a standalone episode and you'll be fine. Like it's totally cool. But if you watch all of them, there's an underlying or like a deeper story that goes along throughout the whole show. Yeah. And that's the same way I treat, for example, my office right now. I have a new office, so the box thing, bring that box, is just like one piece of that story. And if you follow the whole thing, then you see me get the office, you see me put up some new stuff, you get that box brought in, that shelf put up. So it's this ongoing story that's kind of in the background. So it's like another layer of storytelling, essentially. Yeah, yeah.
And so, like, what would you say to other people? I know, like, even just most recently, you and I had a conversation about this, and I can see your passion for other people on YouTube, like helping other people, getting on YouTube. So what would you say to people? Like, say it you can just tell it to me again, because I probably need more encouragement, but like, what did you say to other people starting out? Is it too, like the classic question, is it too late to start on YouTube? Is it oversaturated?
No, I think we're just like, I think that's still the beginning phases of something like YouTube, and I think even bigger, like beginning phase is something like live streaming. So I've kind of dabbled in live streaming now too, and it's super fun. I think the whole world of content creation is just going to get bigger and bigger as jobs get automated. There's not very many factory jobs, and all those like the jobs are just, there's less and less of them, which means there's more and more opportunities for things like YouTube, running a YouTube channel. People still need entertainment and stuff like that. I think it's just a matter of telling stories, like we talked about. You have to tell stories, but even more importantly, just putting yourself out there. So that's the one thing that's 100% unique to you, is your personality, who you are, your experiences. And so if you can put that out into your channel, that's going to make it unique. And if you're telling stories and you're sharing about your life and all that stuff, I think people are just interested in that stuff. Everything we go through is relatable. So me bringing that box from the furniture store up to the office, everybody can relate to those situations. Yeah. And people love that stuff way more than if I was skydiving out of a helicopter somewhere. Like,
oh really? You think so? They don't care as much about that.
In the long run, like if I posted 100 videos of me skydiving and me bungee jumping and me just like, and there's like no story to it really, I think people would get tired of it really fast. It might get initial massive traction, but in the long run, like people just love the mundane. Like I relate to that stuff. I think for example, I don't want to. There's a one channel, I don't want to go into names, but there's one channel that I think was really good at storytelling and just making the most mundane, boring things, day-to-day life look really interesting, or he'd tell stories through it. And then I think people kind of lose track of that, and they start thinking like, oh, I have to do the bungee jumping out of a helicopter, that kind of stuff. Like I have to think bigger ideas all the time. And then eventually I think people just kind of tune out because it's not relatable anymore. It's not accessible to people because that's not my life. Like, you know?
I mean, I think of a film you did with your friend Peter McKinnon. Was it maybe just last year where you guys were, speaking of epic, you had, I don't even know, you had these amazing cars. I think you're in the Swiss Alps. I don't even know what that project was. You were probably doing advertising. And I mean, the video out of that is just unbelievable. I don't mind watching that. But but I can hear what you're saying, that if that was all that you did, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not, maybe if I loved cars, but which I don't care that much about, but after a time, it's like, okay, I've seen this, like, that's not my life.
Yeah. It's kind of like watching, it's in a sense watching a Marvel movie, you know, like a superhero movie, with a lot of action stuff happening, but there's no real story to it. You're not connecting to the characters.
Yeah.
And then watching a more slow paced movie, not much action, but you really feel for the characters. There's a lot of character development. That's essentially, I think, the difference. And Marvel movies are widely successful, but they also, you kind of get tired of them after a little bit.
Right.
So, and it's like, for you, I think, the thing I realized, this is kind of a sidetrack thing, but the thing I realized is that you're building a character. So if you start YouTube or Instagram or whatever, you're building like an online character of something that other people recognize you as. And if you're not building something that's you, genuinely you, then like 5 years down the road, you're all of a sudden going to have this character, and you're going to be so tired of that character because it's not you, it's something else. And now everybody expects you to be that person still. And you know, you go to a meetup, an actual in-person event, and you gotta put on that character and act like that. And I don't want to do that. I want to be myself. I don't want to, you know, have to play some character, you know.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute, because obviously there's some, like, I think of Elle of the Mills, who just publicly, she's a YouTuber that rose really quickly. She's Canadian as well. She has had some sort of public burnout. Like, it would be in the news if you Google her name. I think of another guy who made a terrible film I think it was in Japan. He, you know, a huge YouTuber who made a terrible decision about what to put on his YouTube channel. And so there's this thing about being in the public that causes pressure, tension, maybe some poor decision making. I don't know. What would you say about that kind of, how are you going to do this in the long term without that being your story? Like, what, I guess, or maybe not for you, maybe don't make it so personal, but what would you advise someone else to do so that they do it in a healthy way?
Yeah, well, I think it's what I was just talking about. Is like, whatever character you're building, make sure it is as much as you as possible. I don't know, maybe if you're like, I'm not a born actor, maybe if you're a born actor, you're able to kind of like play different roles better. But I don't, because it is so social media and all that, it's so all encompassing. I think it's hard to fake something like that, and so that'll kind of drive you, I think, crazy. But then I think, I don't know if that's the case of these two examples that you gave. Probably the other one, at least, or one of them, is like public opinion. So like, public opinion can change on you really quickly, and even on a regular basis, there's hundreds of positive comments, and then there's always one just like stupid comment, just some idiot saying something stupid. And if you read comments, for example, a lot, no matter how, like, I'm a pretty confident person, I think I'm confident in myself, but all it takes is that one negative, stupid comment, and it kind of puts a downer on you. It's like, why am I making these videos? What's the point, you know? And I think that kind of stuff really gets to people. But then, I think it's also the fact that when you're doing something like YouTube, it's an infinite amount of work. There is no end to the work. There's no like, all right, now I've finished my day's work. Like, no, you could go on Twitter and start posting on there. You could post something on Instagram and then thinking about the next YouTube video. You know, it's an infinite amount of work. And so I think a lot of people are just plain and simple, like, just mentally burning themselves out because they're working.
Like without proper boundaries and.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, you have a family now? You became a dad while you've been growing your YouTube success. Does that keep you in check a little bit, like the family side of it for you?
I think so. Yeah. It's like it makes it more real, even that like, yeah, like YouTube is second to my family, or even further down the list of important things. So I think that one of the hard things when you, especially initially when you get like, for example, for me, it's been really fresh. I've been growing a lot. Now, if I decided like a normal person, like I'm going to take off 2 weeks and not do anything, then there's this fear of like, but what if my channel like stops growing then? What if everybody leaves and like stops watching my videos? And then I've wasted this opportunity. So there's this weird fear of like, it came super fast, so I could lose it super fast also.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason why people just keep working and keep doing and daily vlogging for years. And like, it's like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you've said you and I work together at a church. You're a person of Christian faith. And I would expect also that having sort of a faith basis for your life in terms of like balance, health, what are your real priorities? I mean, there's lots of stuff in the Bible that talks about, people who gain and then lose it all. And so it gives you some perspective, I would imagine, in like what really matters to you. And
exactly. I think, having that kind of base, it's like, I never started doing YouTube to get famous. That was actually like the negative byproduct of that. If people recognize me on the street, that's like a negative for me, and almost like I value my anonymity, and I didn't need more money. Like I was already making enough money freelancing, so those weren't really my the reason, my motivations for doing this. And so that's why I think it's also a little bit easier for me to take a week off or whatever, or say I'm not posting. But it's still, even for me, it's tough because you have that fear of like, oh, but I don't want to mess this up, I don't want to lose this opportunity.
Yeah. And so just as a last question, a lot of people who are listening to this are Christians, but a lot of them, even more so, are probably working in some sort of creative or communication field related to church. And maybe not. Maybe they're just Christians who also do that work. But what would you say are the opportunities for the church or for Christians? Maybe it's similar to what you would say to anyone else, but what are the opportunities you think? What could the church do with this platform?
I think churches have I think churches are always late adopters for like new things, and I think they're really late on this one. I think a lot of churches think they're using things like YouTube, but really they're just using it as kind of like a dumping ground. Like, oh, we made this video at our church, we showed it at a service or whatever, and then we just put it on YouTube. But there's no like actual strategy of like, we're going to post once a week a video on our YouTube that's for our church, but also for anybody on YouTube, which is like for example, C4 Church, the church that I used to work at, you work at. The goal or the mission is to reach 10,000, right? Which is a massive amount of people, and I always thought that's almost like crazy to aim for that high of a number. But now
it was crazy when we started, anyways.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not so crazy anymore.
and now to think that I have a YouTube channel with almost 400,000 people following it, it's like absurd. Like to fill stadiums up with 400,000 people is like crazy. So I think there's just I think in that sense the mission could be way bigger, or I think there's just a lot of missed opportunities right now. A lot of people are consuming content on YouTube. It's free. It's really easy to put stuff up there. So I would say every church should be thinking about what's our social media strategy, not just that we're posting content, but what stories are we telling? Like who's the face of our channel? Like you have to put personality in there and stuff like that. So I think massive opportunities. Yeah.
And you asked me the other day, are there who in the Christian world is doing this? I think you were like, is there Christian vlog pastors?
Who's the YouTube pastor? Yeah.
Yeah. Who's the YouTube pastor? And I have a few names that I could think of, but no one of real significance.
Yeah.
and maybe I'm not trying to insult anyone, but I just mean no one in my mind is like a standout. Everybody knows that person.
Yeah.
Everybody is watching. Not maybe that person or that group.
There's no
I'm just not.
household name.
Yeah, there's what it is. And even just after our conversation, I saw someone post a video of their top 10 Christians on YouTube. And when looking at the channels, actually a lot of them were quite small.
Yeah.
Some of them were bigger, had more, a few 100,000 people, but some of them were like 5,000. I'm like, this is in your top 10 of people on YouTube. I was disappointed to see how few notable people, like the household name kinds of people. There wasn't really anything. So I think there is an opportunity. And I think there is a danger. I think as soon as you start putting your opinions out there in the world, especially about anything to do with religious opinion, people are going to come at you a little bit potentially. So you have to do that thoughtfully. But
that's with my channel too. Like I'm always trying to make it positive, and I try to have nothing negative really. Like even if I'm annoyed at something, I try not to like make a video about that or address people that are, saying stupid stuff in the comments. I try to just like stay to the positive side and, think strategically about that stuff.
You're probably not going to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If you try and argue with the crazy comment people.
No. Yeah. And I don't, this is probably very unchristian of me, but I think it's a lot worse to get ignored than to get, some sort of answer back. So I just ignore it, and I hope
you don't feed the beast.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't want to open that can,
Yeah, that's it. Well, all right. What would you say if you're, in a sentence or two, if you could tweet it out? We got more characters now than we used to on Twitter. So if you could say, what was your, in conclusion, you're going to tell someone to go start a YouTube channel or grow their YouTube channel.
I would say just be yourself, put yourself as much as possible into it. The channel is about you, but then just tell stories. Like that's what resonates with all people is stories. That's why we watch TV shows. That's why we watch movies. That's why we read books. That's why people are listening to this podcast is because it's storytelling, right? Yeah. So I think that is the most important thing, and that will if you're starting out a channel or something, don't even worry about trying to grow. Don't try to worry about making money from it. Just try to make good content, tell cool stories. Yeah.
Awesome. So Matti, if people want to find you on
things in the end.
Yeah, if people want to find you, Matti, on the internet, how can people find you?
So my YouTube channel is just Matti Haapoja. It's a little hard just to spell out, but then my Instagram. Yeah,
I'll put it in the show notes below.
Yeah, my Instagram is just Matti H, and I'm on Twitter also Matti Haapoja. Twitter, if you're not on Twitter, Twitter is the place to be. I never used to use Twitter, but I love Twitter nowadays.
Oh, well, that sounds like you're throwing this in right at the end. It sounds like a whole other thing we could have talked about. Curveball. Just curveball. All right, everybody. You heard it here first. Matti loves Twitter. Yeah. All right. Hey, Matti, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on here.
Yeah. Well, that was a great conversation with Matti. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I know YouTube for a lot of us is a bit of a newer platform, and we're trying to learn how to use it. So I really hope that connecting with Matti here was something that inspired you, encouraged you, and taught you something new. So if you want to find Matti, let me tell you how to spell his name. Of course, it's going to be in the show notes, but his name is Matti Haapoja. It's a good Finnish name. You can find his Instagram or his YouTube links in my show notes, or you can go look it up yourself. Now, next week, we have Stephen Brewster, or Brewster, as a lot of people call him. Brewster is a creative director. He's a creative pastor. He's a creative mastermind. And you're going to love the conversation because he's worked at and worked alongside some of the biggest and fastest growing churches in America. And so we're going to talk all about leading creative teams. That's what he's really an expert at, creative leadership. We're going to be talking about moving from being the person who creates to being the one leading others who create, and what that transition looks like, feels like, and some tips along the way if your team is growing and expanding and you find yourself more and more at a bit of a distance from that work. We're also going to be looking at a bit of an honest conversation about experiencing public failure. He's experienced, not himself, but in his church, a public failure of a senior leader. And how do you stay resilient and optimistic and hopeful and in the work while hard things have happened? So it's going to be a great conversation. Can't wait to see you back here on the podcast next week. Have you subscribed yet? I hope you would subscribe to this podcast, or would you even drop it a rating, whether that's a star rating or even, you can give a description as well. It just helps us be found in those algorithms on the interwebs so that other people can find us more easily. Subscribe, share, review. It would mean so much to me. Thanks so much. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Word Made Digital podcast with Joanna LaFleur. Head over to joannalafleur.com for more practical tools, interviews, and videos for creatives and communicators. We'd love to help you be the best you can be at communicating the best news in the world. Tap that subscribe button